Hey guys, YouTuber 100 here. Alright, and now here I am to continue Star Trek month to finish off the Next Generation films as well as the original run of the Star Trek films. Now here I am with a review of Star Trek Nemesis. Yeah. This movie was released in 2002. I was actually surprised that a Star Trek film was still was released in 2002. I mean, because like I just said, this is still like through the original run of the Star Trek films, and the very first one, the motion picture, was released in like 1979. And to see that a Star Trek movie was still being released like in the new millennium, that was actually like pretty surprising to me. Like I don't even remember like this film even coming out that late. I don't even remember a Star Trek film being released in 2002. And yeah, I mean, and I was actually like really following the films that were being released in 2002. Like I know like 2002, like there were a lot of big films released that year. I mean, I talked about this back when I reviewed Clock Stoppers last summer. I mean, yeah, there were like a lot of big films being released in 2002. There was like first Spider-Man movie, there was Star Wars Attack of the Clones, there was Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, and there was the second Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers. So yeah, I mean, yeah, there were like a lot of big films being released that year. So maybe that's why like I really like didn't even know about this film being released, because I mean there were just like a bunch of big films being released that year. And plus, yeah, this film was released in like December of 2002, so at the end of the year, which was like around the same time the Two Towers was released. So yeah, that was probably one of the reasons I didn't know about this, because since like the Two Towers are probably like a lot more anticipated because of like it was being Lord of the Rings, and with the first one being so big, that film probably got a lot more attention than this one did. Yeah. And yeah, until just like last year, like 2002 was the only year that both a Star Wars and a Star Trek movie were released in the exact same year. So yeah, so pretty interesting there. And yeah, of course, like it wasn't like until like last year when that was happening again with like Star Trek Beyond and Rogue One. Yeah, so yeah, this 2002 wasn't the only year anymore, but yeah. So yeah, I really like didn't remember this film even coming out in 2002. But yeah, and after watching this movie finally, I gotta say, this film, this is an okay film. I mean, yeah, as the final film of the Next Generation, there were a lot of people that were kind of like disappointed with this film. I mean, that were saying like there could have been a lot better done for the final film of the Next Generation, and yeah, there could have. But I mean, a this isn't like a completely like terrible movie. Like this isn't like a real like atrocity of a movie. Like this movie, it still does have some good things about it. Like there are some pretty good action scenes, and the premise for this movie, it is pretty interesting. But yeah, at times like there can be some really stupid things in this movie, and sometimes it can just be like kind of slow pace and stuff. So yeah, this film is, I think it's like kind of similar to the Generations film, where like sometimes it can be pretty good and sometimes it can just like get kind of stupid. So yeah, it's just kind of like probably like it's from like I think it's a little more like I think there's like a little more, or like what should I say, like I think it does like have kind of like a little bit more good than it does bad. Like it, I still do think like it is kind of like worth a watch. Like it's hard to say like there's really nothing in this film to really recommend watching, because I mean it does have some pretty good action scenes, even though like they can get kind of like can go on kind of too long sometimes, and there can be like too much action at some points. But I mean, it's still like overall, it still is an okay film. Like there's still like some stuff to worth watching this film for. So yeah, and so yeah, if I really had to rank the Next Generation films now that I've seen them, I'd probably say like First Contact is the best one, and then probably Generations, and then this film, and then yeah, Insurrection would be at the bottom. Yeah, I like I have said, I really don't think like First Contact really was as good as Wrath of Khan or Voyage Home, but I'd say it's probably maybe on par with Undiscovered Country. Yeah. Generations, as I said, it was just kind of like half and half. It's probably just like right in the middle. I would probably say I'd place it right under Search for Spock. And for this movie, I would probably like just place this right below the Generations film. And like I said before, with Insurrection, I'd probably like place it right above Motion Picture and Final Frontier. So yeah, this is probably like the second worst Next Generation film, but it's still like okay. I mean, the premise for this movie was pretty interesting. Like, in this film, you had, like, Picard, like, having a conflict with his younger self, and he had to confront, like, himself and learn, like, what his younger self has the life with and stuff. Yeah. And there's also, like, this subplot with, like, Theron discovering, like, another android that looks exactly like Data, and it's, like, a brother of Data's or something. Yeah, I'm not really sure. And yeah, it's kind of like an interesting premise to this. And in this film, you have like the Enterprise crew like dealing with threat to United Federations of Planets from the like the younger version of Picard. Yeah, and so really with this film, it's like not in between the Enterprise along with the like other the enemy ship where like Picard's younger self is with and stuff. So yeah, I have an interesting premise to this, and yeah, like I said, I mean, as of the last film for the Next Generation, like, well, they could have definitely gone out on a better note, and they could have done better with this. This was still like wasn't the worst way to end the Next Generation films. So yeah, I'd say like this film, it's an okay film. I would probably give this film like 2.5 stars out of 4. I mean, yeah, I think like definitely, well, it definitely didn't like go out on nearly as good of a note as the original Star Trek movies did, and like with the original series. Because I mean, yeah, they could have done a lot worse with this, and yeah, this definitely wasn't the worst note that the Next Generation could have gone out on. So yeah, overall, an okay film. Okay, so yeah, let me just get right into it. Alright, so the movie opens up on Romulus, where, like, it has members of the Imperial Senate. They're, like, in a debate on whether they should accept the peace terms, with the Remen leader Shinzon. Is that how it's said? Yeah. And then, yeah, the Remens are like a slave of the Romulan Empire, and they're, like, used as, like, cannon fodder and miners. Yeah. And there's like a faction that's like in support of Shinzon, but like the Senate and along with the Praetor are like opposed to the alliance idea. And after they rejected it, the Praetor then and like ended up being disintegrated along with the remaining senators by just like a device that was actually left by a military aligned senator in the room. Yeah. And it and also meanwhile like the Enterprise is like preparing to like give their farewells to Riker and Troy because like they're being married. Eat on like Betesd or Betesd, yeah. And eventually they end up like discovering an energy reading on a planet in the Coloran system, which is near the Romulan neutral zone. And then like Picard, Worf, and Data end up landing on the Colaris 3 planet, and then when they get there, they eventually like discover like the remnants and like just severed body parts of another android that ends up like is pretty much like a copy of Data. And then once they end up reassembling the android then just introduced itself named as B4. Yeah, and then just the crew ended up like just concluding that B4 is like a less advanced earlier version of Data. And eventually, like the Vice Admiral Janeway ends up contacting Picard, and then she just ordered the Enterprise on a mission to Romulus, and she explained what happened to the Romulan Empire, and then they've been taken over by Shinzon. And apparently, like, Shinzon says that he wants peace with the Federation, and he wants freedom brought to Remus. And once they arrive there, they eventually discover that Shinzon is like a younger version of Picard. And yeah, it's like later on explained by Shinzon that he was created by Romulans to plant like a high-ranking spy into the Federation, and the project just ended up being abandoned when he was just a child, and he was then just left on Remus to die as a slave there. And then many years later, Shinzon then just was named the leader of the Remans, and he then just ended up constructing a heavily armed flagship, which was the Scimitar. And then, like, and then the Enterprise crew just eventually ended up discovering that the Scimitar is actually producing like low levels of the Thalaron radiation, which is actually used to kill the Imperial Senate, and is actually known to be deadly to pretty almost every life form. Yeah, there was also like some attempts that were unexpected to communicate with the computers of the Enterprise, and then Shinzon ended up like violating the mind of Troy through the telepathy from the Roman Viceroy. And eventually, like, Shinzon ended up like aging rapidly because of the process that was used to clone him. And Dr. Crusher eventually just came to the conclusion that the only way to really stop Shinzon from aging is just actually like a transfusion of Picard's own blood. And so then Shinzon ended up kidnapping Picard from the Enterprise, and he brought aboard B4 to the ship. Yep, and because B4 like ended up being planted on the planet to lure Picard. But then it was eventually revealed that it's actually Data on the ship, and he ended up like swapping places with B4, and then he ended up rescuing Picard, and then ended up returning Picard to the Enterprise. And then they finally knew that the plans of Shinzon were to use the warship to invade the Federation and to use the radiation generator as a weapon. And then the eradication of all the life on Earth was his first priority. And so then the Enterprise ended up like racing back to the Federation space, but they ended up being ambushed by the Scimitar. You're on the Bassin Rift, which is actually like a region that ends up like preventing any sort of communication in subspace. And then the Enterprise ended up being aided by 2 Romulan warbirds. Yeah. And then yeah, they also like didn't want to be like complicit with Shinzon's plans. But Shinzon ended up like destroying one of the warbirds and then disabling the other. And then Picard then just ordered the Enterprise eventually to just ram the other ship. And as a result, like both ships ended up like being damaged, and then like the Scimitar's primary weapons ended up being destroyed. Then just to assure the mutual destruction. Shazan ended up activating the Thalaron weapon. Yeah, and then eventually, Picard just decided to board the Scimitar alone, to face Shinzon alone. And then they both fought, and then Picard eventually ended up killing Shinzon by impaling him with a metal strut. And then Data also ended up jumping the distance between both of the ships. And then he used a personal transporter to beam Picard back onto the Enterprise, and then fired his phaser on the Thalaron generator, and then ended up destroying the Scimitar. But Data also ended up being destroyed also as he was saving the Enterprise. And so yeah, then the crew of course was then mourning Data's death. But then the surviving Romulan commander offered them her gratitude for them saving the Empire. Then the Enterprise returned back down to Earth for the repairs on the Enterprise. And then Picard then just bid farewell to now Captain Riker, who had now been promoted to captain. And then yeah, he was off to command the USS Titan, and then start a peace negotiation mission with the Romulans. And then Picard just ended up meeting with B4 and then discovered that Data actually had copied the engrams of his neutral net into B4's matrix before he ended up dying. But even though B4 didn't act as Data yet, Picard was assured that he would become his friend and soon, and then yeah, that's how the movie ended. So yeah, 2.5 stars out of 4. Yeah, like I said, I mean, for the final film of The Next Generation, this could have been done a lot better, but for what it is, I mean, it's still an okay film. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and apparently, there was actually, supposed to actually be one more sequel after this to actually, end The Next Generation, totally. Then it would have, totally wrapped up the adventures of this crew. But due to, this film, not doing, that well, then, it was just ended up being canceled and sold after that, and so, yeah, this ended up being the final film. So yeah, but yeah, I guess with this being the 10th film of the original run of the Star Trek films, I guess this was the right time for it to end anyway. Alright, so yeah, like I said, 2.5 stars out of 4. Overall, an okay film. Alright, so yeah, this is for my review of Star Trek Nemesis, and that finishes off the Next Generation films, and also it finishes off the original run of the Star Trek films, but we're not done yet. I still now to review the new trilogy, which is really the main reason why I really do not like a certain director. So yeah, those are coming up next to finish off these reviews for the month. So yeah, stay tuned for the reviews of the remake Star Trek trilogy coming up next. Alright, but anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this review, so yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.